KLTV soundtrack, KLTV soundtrack.
Good morning, everyone.
There you go.
Good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. I'd like to welcome everybody here. We can start with the Pledge of Allegiance if you'd like to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen for review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. As usual, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week, and I moved to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any correction, discussion, comments on them?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
In the minutes of one of our workshops, we discussed allocation of costs from various departments for various departments. And there was a reference to a change in how IT funds were going to be dispersed. And the request from you was, before we make this final decision, we make sure we touch base with, that IT touches base with you, because I don't think they'd had that discussion with you yet. I just wanted to know, I don't know if they've had that discussion with you yet, but.
Yeah, I talked to Kathy on that, and she will present a final request. It's
Perfect.
A distillation of that discussion.
Great.
Yeah, good point. All
Other
right.
than that, I'm okay with the minutes as well.
Okay. Any others? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. I'll run down through this for you. We have a couple call for hearings. First two are for non-exclusive telecommunications. It's for right-of-ways for purposes of putting whatever they put in the ground, some of their equipment into the ground. And where it crosses county roads and stuff, they have to have right-of-way permission to do that. So that's what those first two are. Call for bids. We have a couple call for bids. We're putting out a call for bid for purchase of residential water meters. This is roughly around 1,250 meters for an area where the meters are outdated. I think we've had a couple workshops where they came in and talked to us about this and the need for them. So a bid is going out for that. And we have a bid, as we're in fall and headed to the winter, we have bids for 3,000 tons of 3/8 screen sand that's stockpiled at the road shop sites in Longview, Kessel, Kalama, and Castle Rock. That's obviously for winter road sanding and clearing. Resolutions. We have a resolution where we're revising the policy for the Citizen Ad Hoc Advisory Board. We've been going through, staff has been going through some of the policies that haven't been updated in a while. This one doesn't have a lot of, it's more housekeeping type updates. I didn't see any major changes in it. I don't know if you guys didn't see any major changes. It just looks like it was terminology type issues.
And the agenda makes it sound like it's a single board. This is a general term for all the advisory boards and commissions that we have, from planning commission to housing task force, all those different things. So
Exactly.
just to make sure that we continue to monitor terms as they expire. We have to get new recruits and a few other things.
Mm-hmm. Agreements, contract bid awards. We contract completion letter to Compass Construction for They completed the Clamor River Road culvert replacement project. That one actually came in under, it was the scope, the initial budget on that, was about 173,000. They completed it at 102,000, so that was nice. Then we did a bid award to Titan Earthwork for the purchase of high density pipe. I'm staying away from that. They were the low bidder at $34,870.24. Correspondence, a letter dated to Bridget Faber, congratulating her for 37 years of service in the auditor's office. A letter to Denise Green, appointing her to the Historic Preservation Committee, representing District 2, 3-year term that will expire at the end of September 2027. C through G are letters from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to Pacific Corp that we get a copy of over different things that are happening out there. The C and D is just an acknowledgement back from FERC that they received what they needed. E was they're doing a cost of construction of a rock filter drain, and FERC was telling them that what they gave them looked satisfactory and they could proceed. F is just an acknowledgement. G was an extension request, and they approved the extension with some parameters. H, a letter to Dana Gutenberger, pointing her to the Board of Equalization. I, a letter to Rena Baliki. Yeah. Nobody's named Smith or Jones anymore. Reappointing her to the Stormwater Advisory Committee, 2-year term that will expire at the end of December 2026. And that's the consent agenda. Questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Consent item 3, your proposal for a water meter purchase, 1,254 according to this proposal you have.
Okay.
They're residential water meters.
They're residential.
What are they connected to?
The county the county operates a number of water systems for residents out in the rural areas.
You do?
Riderwood, for example.
Yeah, I'm
has a
familiar
water
with
system.
that.
So those meters, staff has told us the meters are extremely old. They're not, they've discovered they're not very accurate, which means the billings to the customers are not accurate. And so they're trying to make an improvement on that. Plus, they want to take advantage of new technology so that they can get the readings kind of automatically, which is a system most cities have adopted for meter reading.
I see Savannah's on. You wanted, I don't remember the exact neighborhood this is. I know you've told us where it is, but.
Good morning, Commissioners. Savannah Clement, Public Services. So it would encompass actually all of our water systems. So Riderwood is a large component of our water systems, but we also have several smaller areas. This wouldn't really affect anyone in the Ostrander or Rollingwood area. They are sewer only customers. So it does account for all of our water, residential and industrial, which is a small portion. Most of our water connections are off Spirit Lake Highway in the Toutle area, outside of Riderwood.
And that water actually off of Spirit Lake Highway comes from Castle Rock, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I was unaware the county was operating a water system. It's quite a large purchase, isn't it?
So
Over 1,300.
yes, it's approximately 1,300 water meter.
Have you got an approximate cost for this?
The request for proposals will determine the cost. We do have a budgeted amount that we've requested from the board of 550,000. That's our budgeted amount.
Well, I stand informed. I didn't know the county was in the water business. And it should it be?
Well, I think some of them get handed over to us.
That's correct.
I think we agree with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just have a question. Not big. Oh. This concerns 1 and 2. And since I've been involved in land dealings lately, unfortunately, I'd like to know on this group, how much money is the county getting for their right of way, the use of the right of way?
These were done years and years ago. I'm not,
Yeah, I
Can't.
don't know. I'm not,
who's coming up?
my own attitude is it's for the public good to start with. I don't think
Is
I
it?
need to make.
It isn't a
extra money
profit
off of it.
organization that,
So they are using the public's right of way when they cross.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there's our county engineer.
Susan, yeah, Susan may be able to answer that better.
So, good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Currently, we cannot charge for franchisees to use our right of way. There is a newer court case, sorry about that we are reviewing where King County found a way to charge. The only thing we charge for these franchise agreements is the attorney's time and the advertisement cost. Right now, we cannot charge for them by state law.
okay, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Plus, if they disturb any road or they have to put it back as the way it was. So,
Yes.
okay.
I just want to go back to the water meters and associated software and equipment, I guess. Supposedly this is going to be more accurate, but what's the, like stepping up on the technology side and putting in smart meters, I guess?
Yeah.
Are
I,
the-
I can try and recall a little bit from the workshops there. We have a variety of older meters out there and they don't really detect. We don't know how much water we lose to leakage and stuff. It's hard to detect. These newer meters, and we have to manually read those meters. So we have to send a body out to read all those meters at present. With the newer meters, it has technology that will control the leak issue better. We'll get informed and know in a more timely manner what's going on. And we can stop some of that. Plus, it doesn't take a manual person to go out and read each meter. So there's some cost savings on the other side. It will pay for the thing. I think it was over, it's a long period of time, 10 to 12 years from the cost savings of the labor that we currently have to pay for having to manually read. So it will come back to us, but it's a long period of time.
Okay, so I'm confused by, well, on one side, I thought you said that you still have to manually read them
We have to manually read the meters we presently have.
right now, but you're not going to have to with these?
No.
How do you gather that information from a water meter?
I can probably try to add on to that. So during this request for proposal, we're trying to gather additional information, but from the products that we've been researching it, there are different ways that we can get the information remotely. So these smart meters, as you referenced them, they actually have the ability different products have the ability to transmit the information remotely. So one product that we've been looking at actually can send the signal to you as a drive-by. So if you had a smartphone or a tablet and you're driving these areas that we have, say Spirit Lake Highway, it would be able to remotely send that information to you. There's other systems that the city of Kalama actually uses that can use radio transmission and kind of ping an area, and then that information will send it back to the water plant. So there's different products available that are out there. This request for proposal is really trying to gather that information. We're going to rate accuracy levels. We're going to rate how the information gets transmitted. What are the costs of the software? Obviously, we're always going to be looking for the lower cost option, but we're going to factor all of those into these scoring proposals that we score, excuse me. So that's how the information would get to us.
So it's not going to be transmitted back to the office. Nobody ever has to leave the office. Somebody's going to have to drive by and either ping it, or similar to like a Bluetooth signal, something that has to be there.
That is an option, but there is also other options out there that we've researched through other RFPs that other entities have done that actually do transmit back to software in, say, an office.
I guess I'm wondering how the heck that would work, but okay.
Just out of curiosity, I assume that they use the flow to charge the batteries in the smart meters?
Use the flow of the water.
Yeah.
I can't speak to, to great detail on that. I'm definitely not an expert on it, but there are products out there that I think have that capability. That's not something that we've called out directly in this request for proposal. It's my understanding that they are pretty high in cost for those. These are ran off of battery systems that I believe what we've looked at is about 10 years. And then we would go through a replacement schedule if that was the product that ends up getting selected.
Thank you.
I don't know all the technology, Steve, but I know PUD, they don't come out and read my meter anymore. It transmits some way, so.
That's correct.
That goes through the electrical lines, but there's no, as far as I know, you're not hooking up any type of a communication line to the water meters.
I think I heard you a little bit, Steve, but I think but what we've looked at, again, this is just research, is using actually radio transmission. Like I said, I'm speaking to City of Kalama. I don't have a ton of knowledge on their system specifically, but they actually use ping points. I actually think on a water tower is one of them, that they relay that information through radio signal from the meters.
It's tough for me to believe that a water meter could generate enough strength from the meter for you to even read a radio signal from it.
Yeah. In remote locations like we have, it's a great point. We're not looking at that as like our number one option, but we're looking at what's out there and available price wise because of our remote locations. Because you're right. How many ping points will we need for, say, Riderwood or, off of Silver Lake Highway? Because of the remoteness of the areas, we have been really looking at the tablet features of a drive-by situation because our water crews are already out in those locations. That's where they're housed, like our Toutle water plant, for example. We have been looking a lot at that, but we didn't want to narrow our focus so much just to the drive-bys. We wanted to see what else is out there and available to ultimately do the best choice, cost-wise and efficiency-wise, for our users.
I can help a little bit here. The communications of what the meter is done infrequently. So the duty cycle is extremely low. And then the bandwidth required is extremely small. So if you want to transmit at high speed, that does require the power. But from things we send up to space and all that, there's a lot of technology that gets the most communication for the least amount of power. And those I'm sure are going to be used in that kind of communication. So you don't need much power at all. These guys put out a 10 milliwatts when they're really hot and heavy.
Okay. Is the meter not still mechanical, driving now an electronic signal? I mean, the mechanical meters you're replacing right now, they just don't have the electronics attached to it, basically.
That's correct. It's just a little bit, I don't want to waste your time or go down the rabbit hole, but we're already currently doing inventory on all of our meters because we're required to by the Department of Health. So we're doing an inventory on the mechanics of what we have in our current meters, and some that are so outdated we are having to replace anyways. So we took the opportunity to research better functioning meters, better products, because we have to replace a lot of them anyways. And we just completed our complete inventory that was required this summer. So we have an accurate count. We know what areas we're going to work on next on the mechanical ones we have to replace already. But you're right. So we are already replacing the mechanical ones. These ones that we're looking at will just have an electronic capability as well. So sorry, if that was too much.
Would you be able to shut off somebody's water remotely with this device?
Oh, there are a lot of abilities to do that. Yes. Again, we don't
Okay.
have a product in mind, but there are several out there that do that as well.
So in the discussion in the workshop, one of the issues that came up was a suspicion of leakage in the lines. And I don't know where that leakage is. And there are ways where you can use meters if they're accurate enough. And so that's another specification that they have to pay attention to. That may help locate something. Along those lines, Savannah, are these meters only for end users, or are there some that will be on the trunk lines?
Sorry, I was muted. By trunk lines, do you mean like the larger lines, the meters?
Yeah, the feeders, the main feeder lines come in. If we know what's going into each house by the meters, and I know what the meter on the trunk line claims, I can do a little quick computation and say, I got a problem somewhere, if the meters are accurate enough.
I see Susan jumped on. Go ahead.
So in general, we don't meter trunk lines. There is a meter in Tootle where they tell us, because we purchase our water from Castle Rock. So there is a meter that says Cowlitz County purchased 1 million gallons in 2024, and we know that we metered out 900,000, and so then we can do a calculation. Okay, how many fires do we know that went on? How many lines did we flush? Or if there's a big problem, like there's a big leak somewhere, we will notice because our usage will go up. But we don't meter the main lines. It's generally what comes out of a treatment plant or what we're purchasing from Castle Rock, depending which system you're on, versus what we're selling in the meters. And there's an acceptable loss percentage over a system that you're always trying to get that number as small as possible. But there's fire water, there's leaks. Some systems have open reservoirs, so there's evaporation from the reservoirs, which is not the case in our systems. But those are some of the places where loss is found.
The more you know about the system, the better you're going to be able to manage it and cut losses. Is it worth $500,000 in this case? I think the answer is yes. Is it worth 2.5 million? Probably not. There's always a trade-off.
So this isn't just the end user meters. This is, you're building this back up the line to measure.
No, this is just end user meters. I think we just heard that.
Yes.
Just end user, okay.
So one of the ongoing challenges we have as the managers of these water systems is that your customer base is so low. The capital costs are really difficult to manage. And of course, we serve some neighborhoods with low income as well. So we have this real challenge of trying to keep water rates reasonable and low. And yet the capital costs, keep happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that we are planning to spend down some reserves. We always set aside some reserves that's built in, as you know, with utility rates to try to anticipate the capital costs. But it seems like with these small systems, we're always stretched thin and coming up with enough money to do that. So the technology has been out there for years. I mean, I remember back Whenever I was on the city council in Longview, we shifted over to that kind of automatic thing years ago. Well, we haven't been able to do that until just recently, building up those funds.
Okay,
I have to admit, I enjoy those questions.
Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. I would just like to say that I'm glad to see that this issue is being addressed. I know it's one that's been ongoing. I actually have a couple of clients in Ryderwood, and they have mentioned this to me, that their water billing is just, it's all over the board. And the differential is $100 to $300 sometimes on a monthly basis. So this is great to see that you guys are addressing this. I think this is also a perfect example of how the system should work and does work, where you have staff's experience and knowledge online right here, able to address public concerns to help you guys make better decisions. So I just want to commend you on the way you're handling things, and it's a perfect example of how things should work. So thank you.
My name is Jim Hill, 1100 North 22nd Avenue, City of Kelso, and what I've heard are a lot of questions by folks that are running for office. The simple fact is, the technology that you folks need to take a look at are going to save money in the long run. Right now, your meters are not only outdated, outmoded, they do not report results that folks that need to look at leakage, all of those things, they don't have that data based on the systems that you've got now. So folks, let me tell you, it's a simple thing. The technology has evolved to the point that you can have accurate data presented, and in the long run, it's going to save money. All these other questions, they're just not. Come on, guys, you know what needs to be done, period.
Yeah, I think that requires a retort. You don't know what you don't know. And so you do an investigation, and a decision that just says, well, it's clearly worth it. We don't know that. There are many decisions we hear here that are made just based on a desire. And like I said, it's worth $500,000 to us. Is it worth a lot more?
Mr. Mortensen, you can wordsmith it any way you want to, but you know the technical data that supports replacement of these meters. And what we don't know, we do know. In point of fact, these are outdated systems. There are systems out there that not only over time will pay for themselves, but they'll also protect the consumers. That's the bottom line here. Say what you want, wordsmith it however you want. That's the bottom line.
We could spar any day, but I think you're in a bad mood, so I'm going to pass.
You're going to hear how bad a mood I'm in soon.
Any other questions on consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Last call for questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda passes. Motion items. One today.
Hey, good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. So the one item we have on the agenda today is an amendment to our consolidated contract with the Washington State Department of Health. This amendment is doing three things in the amendment. It is adding $500 for perinatal Hep B work. It's sort of a reimbursement. These cases are very rare. We did have one case, I think, last year. So it's sort of a allocation the state does when you do get a case.
What does that mean? $500 for what?
Our work that we do with these cases. So
I mean, who's involved with the cases? Example.
communicable disease nurse. So when a Hep B, perinatal Hep B is a notifiable condition. So when we get a report of that, if someone has visited their doctor's office and testing has been done and it comes back positive, our department is notified. We do some outreach, work with doctors and do some outreach to the individual to make sure they're aware of different treatment and vaccination options to hopefully help prevent or provide treatment to the baby. So this is specific to mothers who are pregnant.
So it's infants.
And right, and the mother may test positive for hepatitis B. And so it's just to ensure there's some treatment and vaccine options that really help decrease the risk of chronic condition as a result of hepatitis B. So that's some of that work.
So Gina, is this amount, it's only $500, it's not very much. Is this in addition to a previously large amount that we have to address this problem? Or is it a very small problem that we're addressing?
It's very small. Like I said, it's very rare. I think we've had one case in the last couple of years. So it is very rare, fortunately.
Sometimes in our discussion about contagious diseases, we get the impression it's a full-blown major social problem, but nipping it in the bud is probably the best strategy in a case like this.
Yeah. And I think these cases have really gone down over the years. I know hospitals are really good. The recommendation is a vaccine within 12 hours of birth. And so I think hospitals are really good at offering that in the hospital. So that really helps with curbing the disease. Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so the 500 for perinatal Hep B, it's also adding 47,000 for emergency preparedness and response. So this is just reimbursing, or we're able to get some of our time reimbursed for activities around planning that we might do with the state, local, and regional partners for emergency preparedness. And then it's also adding the 719,000 for foundational public health services funding. This is the second portion of our annual allocation for foundational public health services funding. This is we've been having some of these discussions with the Board of Health and looking at different priority areas with this funding. So those are the three things this amendment is doing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So you anticipate the Board of Health may be coming back with some suggestions on priorities for the use of that $700,000?
Yeah, I think at the last Board of Health, we talked about a couple different things that we're looking into, and we'll bring some additional information back for the next meeting, and we may be able to utilize some of this funding for those. And
this is a portion of the funds the state makes available that if we don't end up using it all, the allocation goes back to the state, right?
Right. Whatever is unutilized gets returned to the state at the end of the fiscal year.
For emergency preparedness, how's that number 47,000 determined?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I'm not sure anybody knows. And
if I remember from previous allocations that paid for a full an FTE, we've done without that person, but the tasks have been divided among several other folks. So it's less than a full-time FTE is what that amount reflects.
Right. I think this is half of what our typical annual allocation is. I think we would see, we're in kind of a split year right now with this contract because it renews every 3 years, and that will be the end of this year. It will renew. So they've only done half of this allocation, and we would see the other half with the new contract at the start of the calendar year. But yes, it was previously used. We had a FTE, a local emergency response coordinator. We've split some of the tasks, so we're not able to do all of the tasks, but we've split some of it up, and this funding will reimburse our time to do those.
Okay.
So you used to have an emergency coordinator, and you no longer have that.
Correct.
So the important tasks were divided out between your current staff.
We will be able to participate in some planning activities. There are several tasks that we're letting go of.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the contract amendment with the Washington State Department of Health as has been presented by staff.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the contract with the Washington Department of Health. Questions, comments, anything on that? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. I don't see anything online. We'll call for the question. Those in favor
Aye.
Aye.
also vote aye. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we call for citizens' comments, I just wanted to alert the board to a conversation that I had yesterday. Somebody called and was asking kind of a process question about an event that is apparently underway, and that is a proposed annexation to Cowlitz District 2 by one of the paper mills, Nippon Dynawave. They have traditionally been under contract with the city of Longview for fire services. And the proposal is to join Cowlitz 2. For 100 years, the mills have always been outside of fire districts. Traditionally, long-timers will tell you they've operated their own fire services and contracted with other agencies for more technical assistance or backup, including the confined space requirements that is a particular skill and that requires an awful lot of training. And so apparently the company sent the fire district a petition declaring their intent to annex. And the process then, they got that in July, and in August, they approved the petition and then held a public hearing later in July to see if there are any changes to be made in the annexed area. Not surprisingly, since there's only one owner, there were no changes. The public hearing was done in less than a minute. And so then the next step in any annexation is the opportunity for an independent review board to study the annexation. And that's done by an appointed board called the Boundary Review Board. The state law allows this Boundary Review Board to be set up with one it's a 5-person board. One representative is appointed by the 3 of us. One is appointed by the mayors to represent the cities. And one is appointed by special junior taxing districts, because all the folks that are involved with annexations. You know, when cities annex, that's a direct loss of tax revenue to the county. So that's something that we kind of monitor. But this board doesn't review every single proposed annexation. It has to be requested by a local government that may be involved, or a petition by citizens outside the district who might be affected. So at some point after that decision is made to accept the annexation, it's referred to the Boundary Review Board, and there's 180 days in which a request can be made. Anyway, the telephone conversation was one wanting to know what the process was for getting the county involved in requesting a review by this board. So we did a lot of scrambling. It has not been transmitted to the county yet. So that review period has not begun, but you might get called by folks wanting to talk to you about that. I just wanted to share that we do have the option as an interested party to require the review. But if nobody requires a review, no local government requires a review, or this petition doesn't materialize, then it's automatically accepted and they join. So I heard an estimate that approximately $400,000 in tax revenue would go to the District 2. So just an update for you. Again, it's all pretty preliminary. And like I said, the Boundary Review Board has not received that petition yet. So it could be part of a negotiating strategy. They've typically negotiated with the city of Longview. So that's a lot of money. So.
I would certainly need more time to digest this, and I have questions, but I do have a comment in that in the past when different entities have come to me and said they want to annex, and they start tackling the dollar amounts like the tax revenue, I, on a personal basis, don't view the tax argument at all with positive light. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is what the people in the area being annexed would like. And just thought I'd say that out front. It's not like there's a free lunch out there, and I'm not, anyhow, enough said there. Who is asking or who is suggesting it's a good idea? What is the fundamental reason for asking?
It was a concern about the confined space service. Obviously, paper mills do have confined spaces and they have to have the training. District 2, again, this is kind of secondhand information. District 2 apparently contracts with Vancouver to provide that service. And there was concern by the guy that called.
When you say
who represents
District 2, who is District 2?
Who represents the workers at the
Who is
mill?
District 2?
Cowlitz County Fire District 2.
The Fire District 2.
Fire District, yeah.
I'm thinking you're District 2, and I'm
Oh,
scratching
that's
my
right.
head.
I'm sorry.
Getting totally
I'm sorry. Yes,
lost.
that's right. No, this is Fire District 2.
So Fire District 2 is suggesting it, or the mills are
So the
suggesting
mill approached, they
Yeah.
they own the property, so they're the ones that signed off on the petition and got the ball rolling. The company wants the best deal possible to have the fire service that protects the mill. That's the most affordable. And I remember when I was on the city council, we were, periodically they negotiated contracts all the time.
And
So-
Fire District 2 has a contract with an outfit out of Vancouver. That sounds like hazmat issue.
Well, I guess hazmat response is a different skill set. This is confined
And
space
Fire District 2, I think, is the only one around here that has.
outside
has
the
that.
city of Longview, yeah.
Even in the city of Longview, I think has,
Well, unless it's a special contract, yeah.
okay.
So, anyway, more to happen, maybe, if they resolve their contract issue and, it won't go any farther.
Okay, a couple other things and we'll open up for public comment. Commissioner Mortensen and I had an opportunity to visit Family Promise yesterday. If you haven't visited with them or learned what they do over there, I think they offer a extremely valuable service, and you should get to know them a little bit because I think they're a good group. We have a lot of different meetings. Pay attention to this because we're in budget season. We're trying to look at what, if any amendments need to be made in 25. So you're going to see a lot of stuff coming in this afternoon. I believe the sheriff is this afternoon, but then there's one on the 14th, the 15th, from 21st to 22nd. So just pay attention to, if you have an interest in that kind of stuff, pay attention to the schedule, and because they'll be coming in quite often. With that, we'll open a public comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Hill, 1100 North 22nd Avenue, Kelso, Washington. I'm here today as a member of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, something I've served on for a number of years. Over those years, the landfill has occasionally been a contentious subject. Prior to you, Mr. Chairman, being here, There were lots of activities and suggestions as to the continuation of the operation, who would operate it, and what its value was to this county. Mr. Chairman, who called the SWAC meeting, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting convened last week?
Who called it?
Who called it?
I believe it
Public
was
Works.
Sean Rowe,
Sean Rowe.
Public Works.
So
Is that right, Savannah?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Mr. Dombrowski or who called that meeting?
Sean Roy.
He's
Public Works.
he's the current manager of the solid
And,
waste.
and the purpose of that meeting, according to the information supplied to the handful of people who remain on that committee, was that we were going to discuss rates, presumably household rates. Is that not correct?
I believe, unfortunately, Sean had a meeting. I'm sorry, I wasn't at the meeting. I know enough to be dangerous. So the purpose of the SWAC meeting was to reconvene and discuss transfer station rates.
And we are a board or committee of 9 members, supposedly. The last official meeting, according to the information I have, was over 2 years ago. Is that not correct? June 8th of 2022?
I believe that is correct. I do not have that information in front of me, but I believe you're correct.
And not a single communication has been received in over 2 years to the membership of the folks who advise this board on things landfill. 2 years, no communication, no meetings. And you know what? We have 4 vacant positions of the 9 that are mandated by RCW. And for those in our vast television audience, that's state law. We have people who were denied the opportunity to reapply when their terms expired, people of long service on SWAC who represented our small communities. Mr. Chairman, we had one appointment.
Go ahead.
We had one appointment to represent small communities. And was there an official application made by that individual?
There was.
That you folks? And yet, when I look at the address, email contact, it's not for the mayoral position he holds. It's for so-and-so for mayor, not a city address. Now that's sort of odd. And then I look at the service, the long service of the member that was replaced who represented small communities. He was totally unaware that his term had expired because no one, not your staff, not your staff, you folks, didn't ensure that he had an opportunity to reapply.
Well, using your language, as a point in fact, we talked about that appointment and that came up. And so I walked back, I stood at the counter, I said, make sure he knows in Kalama that he hasn't filled out a reapplication and give him the opportunity. And we held that position to give him the opportunity. It never happened, Jim.
I want to
So
see
as
the
a point
email.
in fact,
Mr. Chairman,
don't
I want
blame
to
that
see
on
the email.
Us here, we contacted them. They never responded. That's the fact.
That's contrary to what I've been told.
Then you've been lied to because I was involved with it myself.
I'll accept that.
And that's the fact.
That perhaps I have been lied to, but I would like to see proof that that individual was granted an opportunity.
I don't need to show you proof. We did it.
How about,
We did it.
how about the fact that for many, many
What do you want?
years,
What do you want SWAC to do? What is your goal here?
I
Because-
want to
because-
fulfill your I want to see you folks fulfill your obligation to see that SWAC is represented by the industries that
And why?
are established.
And why?
Why? Because we have to have representation from every segment, not only the community, but our industry, our ag folks. We need representative on SWAC so that we can come to you and make our best recommendations. And
Recommendations
hopefully
on
you'll
what?
listen to us.
What do you want done?
Yesterday, a letter was sent out yesterday after you folks received my letter soliciting folks from the industries that are supposed to make up SWAC to please reapply.
Yeah, we've had.
I
trouble
knew
getting
the
people to apply.
I knew the Willis family for over 40 years that ran our waste system. And I can tell you in my years of service on SWAC, that family never missed an opportunity to come in and lend their expertise to decisions made by the SWAC board. The people that bought that company have an individual who attended a couple of SWAC meetings, who came to county and said, I want to be on the SWAC board to lend my expertise to it. He called, he emailed, he never got a response. Gentlemen,
Yeah, I
he sits
recall
on
seeing that.
statewide SWACs and is an invaluable asset. And yet he says, Jim, how come nobody ever got back to me? I applied. He applied.
I'm still trying to figure out your bottom line. The landfill is a county asset. It's run like a business.
Probably the most essential one we have, and the folks that you're supposed to listen to as you make determinations about not only how we're going to replace that landfill when its time is up, and it's going to be, the folks that come to you and say, here is our professional expertise, considered opinion on how you should manage our landfill. And we don't have the full complement of people. We held a meeting last week in which one of the representatives who would have made a quorum didn't even bother to show up. Gentlemen, I'm asking you to make sure that SWAC has every single representative that we have as a people expected to lend their expertise to you folks as you make decisions.
We try to fill those boards like we try to fill every board. Sean's been working on it.
If you don't have someone from the heavy industry, you've got a little organization called the CEDC, where all kinds of industrial people sit at that table and take a look at that. Our industries generate waste, and they recognize that those are costs. That waste that goes into our landfill is a direct cost to them. And I got to tell you, if you call 25 companies that could be considered industrial, somebody is going to step up and say, you know what? I want to come up there and help the county make decisions about what my business and my industrial costs are going to be for putting stuff in that landfill.
You know, you misunderstand a good deal, but I'll address a couple of things regarding the appointment of Todd Deinhardt. I don't know why he missed a meeting yesterday, but it's always really interesting that, I'll be pejorative, I guess your friends, you wanted them back on the board. They had every opportunity to come on
That's
the
such an
board.
untruth. It's not even believable. I've had maybe 4 conversations with Mr. Smee in my
Your time was-
entire life.
Your
This is
time
not
was taken.
political. This is the fact that he sat on that committee for years. He sat there. He represented small communities in the most efficient and honestly,
Woodland is a
couldn't have
small
asked
community.
for a better-
Woodland is a small community too, so don't,
Did Mr. Smee have an opportunity to be reinstated?
I beg your
Has
pardon?
his term even expired? Has his term expired, Mr. Mortensen?
Whose term?
Mr. Schmee, who was the representative for small communities on the Solid Waste Advisory
I
Committee.
assume his term expired because that spot is filled by Todd Deinhardt.
Gentlemen,
Actually
I
was
apologize.
expired for nearly a year and then Todd applied for it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to verify the fact that he didn't have an opportunity, and I will be back.
It doesn't matter. He has an opportunity, just like everybody in the county has an opportunity. They go to the county website and they read and they see, I'm really interested in the SWAC.
What he would have applied for has been filled, Mr. Mortensen.
Gee, we should have held it open for him under your supervision.
No, you shouldn't have. You should have ensured that every small community had an opportunity to send a replacement. I want to know why Castle Rock didn't also have an opportunity to apply for that. Why didn't
Everybody
they?
had an opportunity to apply.
For 2 years, you had no meetings of SWAC. There was no communication to me. I can't find a single
That would
email.
indicate to me, I'd say, why do we have SWAC then?
That's the other issue. Yeah, we haven't.
Ever read the RCW? Maybe you should read the state law. Maybe you should. And let me ask you this. We developed a comprehensive management plan for the landfill a number of years ago. And how many commissioners have read it? And the people that are running for the position of county commissioner, how many have read it? And how many of the folks that actually sat on SWAC right now have read? I guarantee you the majority of the 5 of us that remain on SWAC, of the 9 assigned or could be assigned, have read that comprehensive plan. And I can tell you, going back years, when we did that work and brought that plan to you folks,
Okay,
for approval.
the landfill is owned by the county. We pay the debt. We pay the debt. We set aside for the closure of it, millions of dollars. We cover the expenses of that plan. So did you write a comprehensive plan for the other businesses in town?
That has nothing to do with
It has
SWAC.
everything to do with it.
No,
This
it
is-
doesn't.
This is run for profit. This is run like a business. They run it for profit. We pay the bill on it. We pay the close down on it. We don't bill you guys for the monthly payment. Has Kessel seen a bill from us for the monthly debt payment?
We also haven't
Have you
seen
seen a
some,
bill from us for the close down?
we also haven't seen some money that is in sort of
Everybody share
consider.
money with you.
Never-
You don't pay
it's a-
anything to it, Jim.
The land,
Does the other businesses in town share money with you?
the land,
Does Bud Clary, does Bob's, does everybody send you a check?
they
Did
don't
you write
offer,
them a
they don't,
comprehensive
they
plan?
do not operate a public service, a required public service, and not only that, an essential public service. You can't
You can
equate,
go-
you
City of
can't
Council can
equate
contract with
government's,
Anybody they like.
you can't equate government's responsibility to provide services to the citizens that live here with a private business. And forgive me, we
And
need to,
that's why we have the government we have. Maybe we should equate it better. We just think we're immune from all the nonsense, the economic benefits. Alls we're gonna do is just charge the public and make it work, even though it never makes sense. We need to do a better job of it.
can
And the
you,
landfill
can
does a
you-
good job of it.
can you folks on this, on BOCC, honestly say that a realistic approach was made to fully fill every vacant seat that exists on SWAC? I think the discussion needs to conclude.
One
So Jim,
more item.
So Jim, I think the chairman asked what your bottom line was, and it would be interesting to know. With a utility like this, we are in constant comparison with other counties in terms of the rates that are provided. There's only one county in the state of Washington that charges more, that charges less than us. And that is another landfill dominated county called Klickitat. They've got it two and a half times the size of a landfill. So, but our rates are the lowest. And in fact, we have made, in response to earlier plans developed by the SWAC, when it had full participation, the determination was made that we would definitely fight hard to keep the rates for Cowlitz County residents the lowest that we can. But I've also noticed there's been a little bit of confusion that when we talk about rates, some people assume we are the ones setting the rates the individual homeowner receives for garbage collection. And that isn't the rates that we charge. We collect the garbage, we treat the garbage, but those collection costs, and I think all the cities contract with waste control, that company has to charge the costs of running the trucks and the labor costs, picking it up from people's homes and taking it to the transfer stations, where then it gets sent up to the landfill. Okay, so we're talking about different rates. We've been operating this operation with those low rates in mind. Low rates not only for municipal solid waste, but also for our industrial customers, who are actually the biggest, they provide the biggest share. There's no other community in the country that produces more paper, so it's than Longview. It's important to make sure that their industrial rates are kept as low as possible, because we're in such a highly competitive market. We've got an awful lot of workers that we want to stay working. So we're working very hard. We have generated revenue. That is true. We've brought in customers from outside municipal solid waste. Part of the reason for that was our hope that we could achieve a certain amount of methane production to make it feasible for the PUD to convert that to electricity. Unfortunately, that's a program that the State Department of Ecology said isn't good enough. So they want us to just burn the methane off. That's a whole different issue. But if it's the fact that rates are too high that you're demanding a change in the operation of the utility, I guess I'd have to say, give us the proof that we're overcharging, because it's not happening. We may be charging a higher rate for the outside customers, those folks that are bringing in that municipal solid waste. You bet we are, because we're making money off of that. But for Cowlitz County, the rates are the lowest. And I think all three of us are pretty proud of that fact, that we keep those rates really low.
May I just say this? That discussion on rates was what was supposed to happen. That's not why I'm here today. It's a complex issue. All of the things that you just outlined, absolutely the case. And those are things that SWAC can come back and advise you on the technical information, the economic information that comes to SWAC. All we can do is advise you. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because of 4 open seats and an honest effort to fill those seats from the people that should make up SWAC. There needs to be a representative from industry. Let me tell you something. Industry not only generates waste that we have to be concerned of as to fair disposal prices and also amounts and all of those things, but a lot of people work for those companies. So in effect, an industrial representative on that board is not only representing all the industries, as varied as they are in this county, but the employees that work for those companies. That person is missing. And I'm saying we need to fill it.
So the question, Jim, is, and I'm not being critical at all, why hasn't somebody from big industry come here demanding their voice be heard?
You know,
because they were involved for years and years and years.
You know why? Is the people that were there before were requested to come back. But when I talked to people on my city council who happen to work in industry, were you guys aware there was even a thing called SWAC, and that industry needs a representative to bring all of their expertise and advice? No. You know what? We don't do a very good job of picking up the telephone and calling companies. And I would like to call small companies in Woodland, or I would like to call somebody in Longview, maybe not the big names, but guys, they don't make up the bulk of the industrial entities in this county. Certainly they generate the most waste. But the fact of the matter is, we don't do just simple things like pick up the phone, dial a few folks up and say, hey, we got this position open at SWAC. Would anybody in your firm like to come up there and talk about things industrial? Just like, why did the individuals at Waste Control who have such amount of expertise not given the opportunity? Gentlemen, I appreciate your time this morning. I certainly do.
I would still like to clarify some things for the public. They might
How about
wonder.
we do it off the limit, off when I'm gone, and you can address the public as well.
You're
Forgive
free
me.
to, you're free to go. No one's binding you. So for the public, the transfer station loss amounted to about $1.6 million last year. The meeting that was mentioned is one where we're trying to figure out a way how we can reduce that loss and have the minimum impact on the public. And that is something totally manageable. Now, in terms of the advisory boards, we don't spoon feed people. We don't go and collar people. And there's some amount of responsibility that every citizen takes, like November 5th, I hope they turn in their ballot, that kind of thing. Next thing I want to say is that for all the municipalities who might be upset with us for some unknown reason or some ununderstandable reason, we are not binding anybody in the county to use our landfill. They do it because, as my colleague said, it's the cheapest thing around. Each municipality signed a contract that I would not have signed, and that was with Waste Control, and they're bound for another 10 years or more, at least 10 years. Then the next thing is, what use is an advisory board if the member of the advisory board thinks that they're there to offer not advice, but to lobby for their company? I sat in some of the earlier SWAC meetings, and it was shameful how people, they just wanted something special for their company. And that is not how we operate. We operate like the chairman said, it's a business. As soon as we stop operating like a business, we're going to be like maybe FEMA is operating in the Carolinas. We don't want that. We want to be serious custodians of the resources of the people. So yeah, and I'm at a total loss of what this guy was interested in having us do. Did we come away with an action item based on that? That's what a commentary should do, is say, you did this and we'd like an action item. Didn't hear anything. I could add one more thing. In terms of small cities, there's this thing that it's called entitlement, that we think because we have a job today as a representative from small municipalities, that entitles us to remain in that spot however long we choose. No, in my book, given two applicants, one reapplying and one trying to apply, I personally, that's not a board policy, it's an ARN policy, say I want more people to sit in on these boards so they can understand the machinery that is controlling a lot of their life.
Of course, it would be helpful if he showed up at the meeting. That's, but we don't know why he didn't.
When
miss
was
it.
the last time, we didn't show up? We have no idea what happened. I would imagine, well, I might be able to see him this afternoon.
To start off with the appointment there, I remember don't know how many months ago, probably 4 months ago, they had a consent agenda appointing Mr. Deinhardt to the SWAC committee, the open position. And Mr. Weber said, hey, did you contact the small cities about this appointment? There was some discussion. They said, no, we didn't. We will contact them and come back with that item. We did get email from the BOCC, from the secretary, and I had an issue with that because, first of all, Mr. Deinhardt had just become mayor. He didn't have any kind of history, didn't know what was going on with the board. We needed to have, especially because this is such a very important board to the county, that you had to have somebody with some history and some knowledge of what was going on. So I contacted Mr. Hellenberg about this, and I said, you know, that what do you think about this? And he goes, I have no problem with Adam. He's done an unbelievable job. And he wants Adam to stay on the board. And so I then proceeded to call Mr. Deinhardt that day. And I asked Mr. Deinhardt, I said, listen, Adam's been on the board for a long time. And I was wondering if we could reapply Adam to, you know, Mr. Smee to the board. Mr. Deinhardt said, I have no problem with that. I just got my feet underneath me as mayor, and I don't have time for that anyway. And I said, thank you very much. So I called the commissioners, if I remember right, I called all three to voice my concern, and Mr. Hellenberg did the same thing. I know he talked to at least one or two, and he said, we want Adam back on the board. And I did ask Mr. Deinhardt, I said, Mr. Deinhardt, how did you know about this? And he said, well, Mr. Mortensen called me about it individually and asked me to be on this board. So obviously there is some situation where, yes, you shouldn't be a babysitter, but you also shouldn't advocate for your people to be on a board that is going to give you the information that you want to hear. And so, and I think of Mr. Hill when I think of the open positions. When you're going to make a rate increase decision, I think it was last week for the county, I think that all members should be, I think that they should have a full board before you make it a, you know, not a 5-member out of 9, if I remember right, is the number of positions. And so I'm thinking that, I'm just guessing what he was asking for is before they make a decision for the county, that all 9 people should be appointed, especially since the larger industries are going to be affected, as far as I know. Like I said, I wasn't, you know, I'm not sure if that decision was for just, you know, for individuals or companies, but having the 4 positions, and I've learned a long time ago that each position is important for making, when it comes to this kind of decision, it's best to have every possible voice there to give the various inputs to make the wisest decision made. So
Mayor, you're talking about the advisory board making decisions. You mean recommendations.
Right, thank you.
Decisions are left up to us by law.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's why I think, you know, like I said, I'm just guessing. I think that he was disappointed that that was put on, and, you know, I'm not sure whether if he was asked to convene this, or you know, the Public Works Director did it on his own. I don't know the background of why he would convene that meeting, and without a lot of, I didn't really see anything on the agenda or anything. I wasn't advised. Matter of fact, I heard Mr. Paul Hellenberg was there. I asked him how he heard about it, and he said his Public Works Director got an email. And I said, well, I didn't get an email. That I know of, my staff didn't get an email, so I have no idea who it was sent to, how it was sent, and so it was just a concerning thing, and how that whole thing transpired. And I think the aspects of the rate increases, the county makes about $7 million a year with the landfill. And I think that maybe some of it should be offset with the amount of money that the county's getting to help the small cities with the tipping fees to offset that increase that they're asking. Because that was supposed to be part of a discussion years ago that the cities were supposed to get some of that money back from the landfill, because it's unfair that the county's getting, now it's going to be 7.5 million and the cities aren't going to get anything of that money. And it's not helping our budget, but it is helping yourselves there. So I'm just trying to give another side to the story of what happened. So we did get the email. I did address it. I did call, say that we want Mr. Smee back on the committee, and somehow Mr. Dinehart got back on there, or I was appointed.
So if I may, regarding Mr. Dinehart, I think you want to be a little careful here. I have said all along that if someone was on a committee and there is possible interest elsewhere, or there's interest, I would tend to favor cycling through new people. There's a lot of history here. I'm not going to go through that, but be careful when you say your people. You're advocating for your people, and I'm advocating for my people under my definition. So it's a two-way street, and you're very quick to point the finger. Your final statement is one that is bothersome. You have no moral, ethical, or legal handle on the revenues from the landfill. And that you keep on promulgating the thought that you're entitled to your fair share is pretty shameful.
I'm not just, if you want to go down a moral, I definitely don't want to go down a moral rabbit hole with you, because Mr. Mortensen, it would not be a fair fight. And I just want to say that when it comes to $7 million a year, this is an enterprise fund. This is not a revenue source. This shouldn't be a revenue source. And so I think that the cities should get a portion of that money. It shouldn't be sold, the capacities shouldn't be sold to the highest bidder or to other municipalities for our future capacity, because we need that landfill for the 100 years that it was applied, that it was asked for when it started, and we're selling it. And that's just I know some people do have an idea that we should get more money in by other cities and other counties, but at the same time, it's our future residents and businesses are going to be paying for this decision, the short-term gain and long-term pain to the community.
Yeah.
Once again, you have no idea what it is you're saying.
So did you get $7 million from selling capacity for the landfill? How did you get the $7 million from the landfill?
How did you decide that you should have a blue shirt or a bluish shirt on today? It's an irrelevant question, what
It's
you're
not
asking, and I'm not
irrelevant
going
at
to
all.
play that game with you.
Did you receive $7 million from landfill for selling capacity?
Well, if like I said before, this is really confusing to me, because it's a business. It's a business entity. It operates, and we expect it to generate revenue. Otherwise, why would we operate it? It generates revenue, and we subsidize the transfer fees. We've heard 1.3 or 1.6 million. So I can make a case that, yeah, the cities are getting some money back. We need to look at that rate, because as any business, you can't keep paying out over $1 million and expect it to run forever. And should the landfill work at capacity and get all it can do now? I'd say absolutely. You don't know what Department of Ecology is going to do in 5 years. We may not even be able to operate a landfill. So to think 100 years down the road that they're going to let you have a landfill That's a pipe dream. I just don't see that happen. They already said, we'd rather have you burn gas into the atmosphere instead of use it for energy. So you know, they have no lick of common sense up there. There's a room full of nitwits making these kind of decisions. So we operate the landfill as a business, and I don't apologize for that. It brings revenue to the county. We're extremely lucky as a county to have that, and I appreciate that we have that. There's counties that would die for having a landfill, but you just can't go out and do a landfill.
Adding into that, you have no idea what makes the longevity of the landfill. All he said is true, but the landfills like the one up in King County, it was supposedly exhausted 8 or 10 years ago, but the space comes back again depending on what you throw in the landfill. Our guys are trying their very best to put in the good stuff in the landfill so we can reclaim the space. The longevity right now, the DOE puts out an annual report. I don't know what numbers they use. But like I said, the King County one was shut down 8 or 10 years ago, but it's still operating within the license. We can go and ask for more than 1 million tons a year. Until you understand the details, you ought to be a little more careful.
It's one of the things I learned about municipal, we call it municipal solid waste, MSW versus industrial, is we're working on our 10th cell up there. I believe we have 22 total cells. MSW waste decays over time. That's why we have the leachate ponds, and that's where the methane comes from, and it burns off. So if you get to the point where you filled all 22 cells, you go back to cells that are MSW waste, not industrial waste. MSW waste, you have capacity again. So it's if we're left alone and able to operate that landfill has an extremely long operation period to serve people for a long, long time. And over time, people are pretty industrious and they figure different things out, and there may be different ways of getting rid of your stuff in the future. I can't, predict what people are going to come up with, but.
And in typical fashion, you threw out a red herring that isn't on the table, which is selling the landfill. There were meetings, and I know he and I were at the meeting. You weren't. This was 8 years ago, when in this room, an executive session, we were told things. And we had no reason not to believe them. Make a long story short, that isn't on the table, hasn't been for a long time. And it was settled about 6 years ago. Don't try and get mileage out of that by trying to get an emotional response out of the public. That just isn't credible.
To address the point about a business, you can't run the county like a business because it's for the common good and not for an individual good. And if you treat this like a business, I'd close the libraries, I'd close the parks, I'd get rid of the staff. I mean, you could make this like a business. It's not like that. The county doesn't, it's for the common good. And when you sell more capacity, that does have a long-term. I have never seen where you could add more and have less. So when you're adding more capacity, or when you are bringing in more garbage, that is definitely going to reduce the long-term longevity of the landfill. And, when it comes to municipalities, you can't think of decades. You can't think of 10 years or 20 years. You have to have a scope of 50 to 100 years all the time in your mindset. And I have such a hard time with bringing in more garbage on one of the only couple landfills in the entire state of Washington, and everyone else is just scrambling to get rid of their waste. And when it comes to municipal waste, Divert is going to be taking some of that municipal waste and converting it. So that's a whole different thing in itself. But I just have a hard time with raising the tipping fees, but at the same time, getting more money from selling more capacity and converting enterprise funds to fill a budget gap.
Well, we're probably gonna have to disagree on that because it needs to be run like a business. Counties, you think we're for the public good, you have to get a permit to put a new roof on your house. You have to get a permit to do
breathe.
about anything. So you tell me counties is public good? No. Counties are just, counties, any government entity, their sole purpose, and if you watch it over history, you'll see it, their sole purpose is to get funding and then to grow so they become powerful. And I can point out, I'll point out two departments from the 70s that were formed. Department of Education to keep us at the top of the world in education. Where are we now? We're nowhere near that. What we have is a Department of Education that costs us billions, probably billions a year to operate and does nothing for us. Department of Energy was formed in the 70s because we were too dependent on foreign oil. Where are we now? Dependent on foreign oil. What we have is a department that probably costs us billions to operate every year and does nothing for us. There's one time since that point in time that I can recall that we became independent of foreign oil, and that was done by one man. Wasn't even done by a department. So I don't buy, governments are to ensure the freedoms of the people and let them do what they do. Let them enjoy commerce. Let them go out and make businesses and entrepreneurship and all that stuff. All we do is get in the way. And so I don't have this lofty vision of, I know I work in this building, but I don't have this lofty vision of we're this panacea for all the problems in the world. We're the cogs in the gear for getting it done right. And I sit here trying to remove cogs one at a time if I can. That's the toughest thing to do. And it doesn't mean I don't enjoy everybody that works here and I want them to do well, but my focus is always on the public and we need to make life easier for them. And we don't do that. We find reasons to get in the way. And that's a simple truth. You can just look at it and you can see we find reasons to get in the way and we need to get out of the way and we need to get out of this stuff. If the public wants these things, they can pay for them. If they don't.
Well, here's the challenge that we have. There are strains of truth that you both talked about. There are some government functions that are public service, and you identified a number of them. But utilities are businesses. They should be operated on businesses without a reliance, as much as possible, without a reliance on tax revenue. In fact, as you probably know, cities get to tax utilities. We don't get to tax utility. Counties don't raise money that way. Nevertheless, the utilities need to be operated more like a business, and I, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we do. You mentioned money that the county is making. We're making that money based on rent that we charge. The general fund is guaranteeing the payment of the bonds. So it's an asset owned by the general fund. We're charging a rent. The utility is operating as a business. That rent is part of the business experience. So I think one of the couple of things that sometimes gets lost in the discussion is that the cities are our partners in generating the revenue in the landfill. We have the contracts, we bring in the municipal solid waste. And that's an important reality. When the last time we had a meeting with representatives from the cities, they demanded a per capita share of the profits, which was not realistic because the county does provide services for the cities that they don't have to come up with the money for. All of the costs of the jails, we have contracts with all of the cities, but the expenses are far beyond what the city's contracts allow. We operate the court systems and the cities don't, we're paying an awful lot of stuff running the elections. So a vast majority of those profits should be ours. It's not a surprise. I've talked about it before, that my perspective is we ought to share some of the profits with the cities, give them the opportunity to affect rates, to keep rates low. What is properly pointed out to, though, is that the cities aren't legally obligated to pay off those debts. It's all a burden on the county. And that means the counties, as owners of the system, can make the management decisions. Interestingly, last year, there's another utility that the county is a partner with, the city of Longview, the city of Kelso, and the Beacon Hills Sewer and Water District. And that is the Central Wastewater Treatment Facility. And they approved a huge multi-million-dollar expansion far beyond the needs of those four entities for solid waste disposal. And they expanded their capacity in order to provide another stream of revenue by offering services to outside businesses. But according to agreements that the four partners signed, all four partners have committed their property taxes to pay off the debts if the revenues don't come in from ratepayers. And the extra money is going to keep rates low for the partners. I would imagine if the county is willing and the cities are willing, and the cities also pledge their property taxes to paying off the bonds. Worst case scenario, if the revenue doesn't come in, that would give you a piece of the action. That hasn't been discussed. That hasn't been an idea that has been brought up. But it certainly is a model. If we are partners, we shouldn't be at loggerheads all the time. We should share the risk, share the responsibility, share the decision-making. The state law is pretty clear, though. Counties are in charge of the solid waste flow, and that is a burden that we have under the state law. We'll do the best we can to make sure we generate revenues that help keep rates for Cowlitz County residents and businesses among the lowest in the state. And we'll continue to work on that. I do think we should probably make a better effort of trying to fill in the vacancies. You may recall, and I think you were here when we passed the consent agenda that included a revision in how we make up our advisory boards, and we've got better procedures to try to do that. And that was certainly one of the changes to allow us. We've had a lot of turnover in staff, both at the landfill as well as within our own internal offices. And that has brought about an awful lot of change. And I think this is an example of something that kind of got left out. We should have a full advisory committee. We shouldn't be afraid to have them on board. So for the 85 days I have left, I'll continue to work to try to build better relationships. We're partners. The reality is that the vast majority of the money that's generated by the landfill comes from the residents of Cowlitz County. It's their landfill. It's not ours. It's the people's. And so we got to look for opportunities to share with the owners, I think, in different ways. It's not that we aren't right now. It's just a different way, and I think we could do a better job of bringing people together to work together. The challenges are there. We don't know, absolutely true. We do not know what the Department of Ecology or the state legislature has in mind. Well, we kind of do. They want to get rid of landfills, period. And we have to be operating with a united front against those who want to take that away from us, rather than being divided. We need to be working together. So there will be a task ahead for next year's Board of Commissioners to try to build that coalition that has more champions for the Cowlitz County landfill, not less. Hopefully that'll happen. So,
can I touch on just real quick, because I hear this a lot, and I hear it at the cities and stuff, and I don't disagree with it totally. There's a lot of, we don't work together, or we need to build coalitions and stuff like this, you know? And what I tell people, and I think it's the absolute truth, is in this arena, everything is public. We can't sit in private and hash anything out. Everything is hashed out in public. So you're going to have difficult conversations, and I'm not afraid of difficult conversations. It doesn't mean I don't like the person having a conversation with me. Those are two different things in my mind. I can have a perfectly good, just a, friendly relationship with somebody and not agree with them on everything. These kind of conversations, I'm here to tell you, 39, 40 years in the industry, in the private sector, these conversations happen. They just happen to happen in a room, and you go at each other, and then you come to an agreement, and then you come out and it looks like you don't ever have any turmoil. It's not the case. We just have our turmoil in front of God and everybody, right? So you see the inner workings that happens everywhere. So I'm not disagreeing with Dennis. I think there is some of that because you're in a political arena. A lot of it is emotional. So you have some more, a little bit more, but it's not that uncommon. We're just trying to hash things out. You just get to see the dirty workings of that hash out at times. And I take it as no disrespect to the people we're working with, or the people that are coming after me, or anything. I mean, I like Jim. I've sat down and have coffee with Jim, and he got after me today, and I got after him. If I go and chat with him tomorrow, I'd have a cup of coffee with him. I mean, it's two different items. So I just try to make sure I clarify that once in a while. It's not that different than private sector. There's a couple differences, but you all get into this, you just get to see it.
Yeah, a thing that always gets me is lack of rational perspective. And pretty often that is subordinated to the thought of partisanship or some other nonsense claim that with that, there's nothing you can do. It's like the common response now is in an argument, well, that's racist, like trying to shut the border down in some reasonable way. You get accused of being a racist. It's like, really? So if we were not to take municipal solid waste from outside the county, this is a computation I did probably 4 years ago, it would cost, our cost internally that would be borne by the public here would triple what they're paying, what they were paying at the time, factor of 3. My colleague mentioned that they pay the bill, the outside people help pay the bill. That's absolutely true. When you're advocating issues like longevity is important to you, how do you present that to the public? Is the public willing to spend another $10 a month in order to fulfill your desire for something that is sort of vague anyhow? That's the kind of decision that a board has to make. Cities as partners, anybody who has been any place in the world knows that design by committee is very complicated, doesn't really work too well. I would be totally against anything that says the county will give up some kind of control over the landfill just to make peace. History's got all kinds of examples like that. And I will remind everybody, we do not hold the cities captive. If they want to go put their landfill waste out, put their waste elsewhere, other landfills, I don't think any of us would object. We don't hold people captive. We let the market do it.
Okay. One last thing, I would talk about the business aspect and what you said about the various points about, I think, Department of Education and oil and stuff. To me, that's not the common good. That's only good for certain government agencies or good for certain people, not for the common good. So that's, I just want to kind of clarify, when I say the common good, it's not the good for certain people, it's the good for everyone that's going to be affected by these decisions. And so I don't want to, go down to the national levels when it comes to decisions based on that higher up, I guess, decisions that are way out of my wheelhouse, I guess is a way to put it there. And so I think the SWAC, before they bring in more solid or waste, they should be brought, to the SWAC committee to make recommendations, because since that is kind of, to me, that's a decision for them to say, okay, if you're going to bring in more waste, how is that going to affect our future? How is it going to affect the mills and the residents, and how is it going to affect all of these people that will be affected decades down the road? And so before we bring in more waste, before we sell more capacity, maybe we should bring it to the board and say, how is this going to, just have a variety of various interests to make sure we make the right decision. And I think that would be part of a discussion of the SWAC, instead of just making that decision just based on the board here, the 3 people. I just think that 9 people having a recommendation, that's part of that's what they do. They advise the board on a decision for these types of decisions, with various interests. Because we're not, the board here doesn't get affected the same way the mills would get affected. They're into the higher end dollar amount. So what's going to happen to them is going to be a lot different than what happens to us. So
one of the other advantages of having advisory committees, whether they're planning commissions or housing task forces or any of those things, is that they become advocates for the program. And that they have a part of, making recommendations for, even if it's only recommendations.
Right.
Particularly at the county level, where there's only 3 of us, we need all the advocates that we need. And we're constantly fighting interests outside our county that have disdain for the people that live in Cowlitz County. So like I said, we need to figure out a way to bring us all together as partners, because we're after the same thing. That's the lowest possible rates for Cowlitz County residents.
There's
continue working towards that.
Yeah, there's so many issues. Fundamentally, accountability is lacking. Somebody in an advisory board can advise for their own pocketbook. In fact, I've seen that way too often. And there's no accountability there. Accountability, in part, is here. We can screw up royally, and what penalty do we pay? We just don't get reelected. But the damage has been done. I take that very carefully as an obligation on our part of the board. To that end, I wouldn't call the advisory boards as advocates. I'd call them advisors. By the way, you're trying to step into a quagmire. Do you realize that? Oh, no, I didn't. That is the fallacy from the street sometimes is that certainly the Dennis and I have been living this thing for 8 years at least. He's probably been here, well, he's living it for 12. There's so many nuances we understand there, and to go over that in sound bites just isn't practical.
And the mills only have one, if I remember right, is it 1 seat or 2? So yes, they would have input, but it'd be just another input. It wouldn't be, I could understand if they had a majority. If they had 4 or 5 members, then I would say that they would have an overwhelming interest of swaying the board. But if I remember, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure of the makeup, but I think they only have either 1, at the most 2 members of the SWAC out of 9. So they would not be a driver on as much as, there's not going to be a majority. So it might be an interest, but it won't be the majority of the interests. Okay, thank you. Sorry. No? All right. Have a good day.
I know it doesn't always sound like it, but we always enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
With regards to the capacity of the landfill and the longevity of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but is there not a process that we can go through to increase the height of the cells and the annual intake? Isn't there a permitting process that we can go through to extend that to make, to where we can bring in more and we can make the height, the cells higher?
So Steve, those guidelines are all based on the permit issued by the Department of Ecology.
But can we not
I'm not
request a new
sure we
permit?
want to open up the
Yeah.
limits that they've given us so far.
Yeah,
That's always a
We know
double-edged
they're gonna
sword,
reduce
right?
it. Yeah.
sure.
You open it up, and then you don't know what they're gonna come back with.
Yeah.
So the limit is 1 million tons a year.
Mhm.
1 million tons a year.
A million tons a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at 1 million tons a year, originally the life expectancy of the landfill was 50. Half that amount, you get twice the time.
Mhm.
Well, when we were engaged in the discussion with the cities went along with the idea of, let's bump it up to 750, bring in this municipal solid waste, make the, generate the income, generate the opportunity to do some different things with the landfill, with the money. So that happened, and we've generated contracts, so we're really at about 800. But the staff is also monitoring capacity and height and air space and all of the factors that go into it. And we're in good shape for 80 years.
I think 80 was the last figure I
80,
saw.
82, I think was the last estimate that they had.
One thing to make sure the public understands, the license is for airspace.
Yeah.
And we make an equivalent of 1 cubic yard of space is 1 ton. So when, in the language, we just make that approximation. So when, at the end of a year, we have 1 million tons that have come through, we probably used up less than 1 million cubic yards. And then the following years, as the stuff compacts and decays, if you use municipal solid waste, there's a rule of thumb there. I think it's a factor of 3. So when you had 9 feet, it became 3 feet after a while. And a lot depends on what you put in the landfill. It turns out that most of the industrial waste is waste we do not want. So I would advocate making a deal with the people who own the landfill on the east and say, how about if we take some of your MSW here and you take some of this stuff that we don't want? As my colleague mentioned, the Klickitat is 2.5 times our size.
So I just wanted to, for clarification purposes, based on current limitations, we have 80 years.
I think that's the last
That's the
estimate we
last
had,
estimate
Steve.
that we
Yeah.
had.
Okay, so it's obviously we want to be proactive with certain things. But it shouldn't really be a point of contention right now for something that is bringing in revenue, is 80 years down the road, and we have options to mitigate that, correct? The landfill issue as far as capacity goes. Right now, what I see is you guys are making decisions based on Chairman Dahl's comments. We don't know what the Department of Ecology is going to do next year, let alone 80 years from now. So in business, we need to get while the getting's good. That's the way I see it.
We also know in the business world, things change substantially.
Mhm.
Because of things being shipped a lot, I'm sure that cardboard packaging has really grown. Is it going to go to the landfill or not? We know that Drax is proposing to take municipal solid waste of some kind of food waste. Businesses change. It's good today. Will it be good tomorrow? Don't know. If there's a severe downturn in the economy, certain kinds will go down, like construction and demolition waste will greatly fall.
Mhm.
Municipal solid waste will only fall a bit. maybe.
I will tell you
10%.
that one form of refuse that I would just as soon see taken out, and that's the plastics. And we're waiting for the industry to figure out how to get rid of the plastic or recycle or reuse it. Something has to be done because it's inert. It's not creating methane. It's not shrinking. It's just there forever.
Yeah.
And there's a finite limit.
I think it's.
So I mean, I'm, you know,
Yeah.
hopeful that the system and the technologies will make a big change on that.
There's been a lot of effort to somehow, particularly like with plastics, that's oil in there with pyrology, which just means heating the hell out of it in the absence of an oxidizing atmosphere. And it's really hard to see where it doesn't cost you more energy in than you get out. And you really need to do a holistic analysis on that. I think it's out in Spokane. There is a facility that might still be going to burns trash. And I don't remember the arguments, but it's never taken hold. And you can imagine if it were anywhere near useful, you'd be hearing about it.
Who knows, Steve? You know, I'm a big believer in man and their in the way they work and develop. They're always striving to do things better. And you may not even need a landfill 50 years down the road. Who knows? You know, somebody may come up with something and it works. I echo, and I was a little bit encouraged. I went and visited the pipe plant last week, that they can use some plastics, all kinds of plastics. It comes in different grades, and you have to be careful how much they mix in. But to
That's
me,
the new
that would
pipe plant in the mint farm.
in the mint farm, yeah. And so that was kind of encouraging, because we've been hearing a lot that, well, we have no market for the plastic, so it just ends up in the landfill. So as technology gets better, now they're able to use some of that, not in great quantities, but they can mix it in with the other, and it keeps the integrity and stuff of the pipe. And my hope is that they continue to develop that type of stuff and use it.
The only thing I would add to that, it really confuses things, is there are all kinds of plastics. Some are recyclable, some aren't. Some will, you leave a shopping plastic bag out in the sun, and next year you'll find it's all kind of half decomposed. And the things that hold the six packs together, they're different. It just goes on. It's in general, people discount the effort it takes to recycle, because you just can't throw the plastic into a bin, because somebody throws the plastic in the bin along with their leftover salad or something, and somebody has to sort that, and that's human labor. And until we can automate that, which we might be able to do, what's it called? An municipal recycling facility. They call it the MRF.
The MRF, yeah.
Yeah. And they put a lot of effort into that, but it's not cheap. That is one of the reasons our transfer station is operating at a loss, because we haven't wanted to raise the prices there, but it's becoming a problem. We pay for all the recycling. Somebody thinks you just put the bins out there, and you know, we actually pay people to do all that. It comes out of the general pocket. There was a mention about good policy is one that actually doesn't select a particular group of people. It really applies to everybody. And that's a very good comment that was made. And when we talk about what we do here in solid waste, when we give preferential treatments, those are all things that were contractually signed at the beginning to kind of get the landfill ongoing. in doing that, we ended up with, I think, well, there was a company, one of the big ones that spun off a Weyerhaeuser that did not follow the rules. Eventually, they violated the contract, and so that one's null and void. I'm not sure where we are in the negotiations on that one. Anyhow, the future is uncertain.
Absolutely. And the point is, I think that, and you guys have brought up some ideas that we have options, some more favorable than others, you know, and possibilities to extend the life of the landfill. And when I toured the landfill, I will say that Mike and the people running it are doing a phenomenal job. That is an amazing site. It's an amazing landfill to watch operate in the way that it works. So kudos. I'm not saying that we don't need to be forward thinking. It sounds like Commissioner Dahl, some of the things that you said, we are forward thinking, and we do need to continue to have this conversation, which has been a good conversation thus far. But I also think that we can spend our time focusing on things that are a little bit more immediate need in the future than 80 years into the future, because there are things that are more pressing than the landfill right now. So thank you.
There's one other risk. I did post on Facebook the USGS announcement we got about seismic activity at Mount Adams. You know, if we're still obligated to pay the bonds off for another 9 years, I think.
Something like that.
Something like $20 million is still owed. And it's a little more than that. But if any of those things blow, the county is in a heap of trouble trying to figure out how it's going to pay the bonds, because not only does it have to pay the bonds, it doesn't get the revenue from the landfill. There are risks all over the place. That's the way it works in the real world.
Well, we did survive the eruption of Mount St. Helens, even though Mount St. Helens is not in Cowlitz County. It's on all of our logos. You mentioned seismic activity. If the big one happens, it's all irrelevant. The catastrophic
Depends
division
how big is big, yeah.
The Olympic Peninsula west of Puget Sound is a separate island, or whatever the tremendous movement would be. But we have to do the best we can with what we've got, what we know today, and keep in mind the basic policies. Try to make it as efficient as possible, cost supporting as possible. Make sure that taxes are as fair as possible to provide for those things that don't generate revenue, like jails.
Yeah, you know, and I don't think we really publicized. We've talked about, we did have a memorandum of understanding with Cowlitz PUD to have the methane, instead of burning it off, use it for power, and they were going to build the line and do what's needed to do that, and it would generate roughly, I think they estimated 4,000, 4,500 homes worth of power.
Roughly the number of homes in Castle Rock.
Yeah, and we had committed some money to it, and we actually, I'll temper this a little bit, we actually didn't ask for, they were going to build a model that would include payback to us, and we said, we're not so worried about that. We'd rather it be the service for the community, though if you pay off your debt over time, then it would be nice to have that back, and they were okay with, they were good with that. But just, my point is that at least this board here, when we were having that discussion with PUD, we said, no, let's keep it as feasible as we can for the public. We think it's a good thing for, as Micah points to, more of a service to our community, that we can weather that expense. And if we get a chance to get it back, great. But we're more concerned about making sure that we get this for the public. So I think we take those things in a year and a half or whatever that I've been sitting here, every time those type of things have been broached, my colleagues said, we've all been kind of on the same page that let's look at the public side and see what we can do there. I don't think I'm out of turn saying that.
Yeah, I think we were giving them 6 million and no strings attached other than it's for this effort.
Yeah.
And the only string was if they ever made a profit out of it, eventually we'd be happy to get paid back. But up till then, it's our money they're using.
Yeah.
Our money means the county money.
Yeah. We're kind of running. I don't mind that at all. This afternoon, remember the sheriff is in and actually the sheriff is one of the service things that we've heard about. And I've never changed my mind from the beginning. I think the primary role of us is to ensure the freedoms of the public, they're our citizens. But I know our citizens like safety, so they like your law enforcement, and I know they want their water to work right. And so those are the big services that I consider services to the community. Other than that, I see it as, yeah, nice to have, but the others got to be taken care of first. So, and I believe the sheriff is in this afternoon. That's one of the big ones. That's probably, I know it's well over half of our budget. It's one of the big things we do.
Law and justice is,
Yeah,
over-
yeah.
over half the general fund, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Been a good morning. Any other comments?
I could add, following exactly whatever we take from the landfill, we spend almost 3/4 of the budget on law and order, including the sheriff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that the public demands of us. And so I don't regret that government is part of that because the public demands that. We get into too much stuff that they probably don't really demand, but we think we know what we're doing, but that's a big one this afternoon. So anyway, there's your invite. Okay, see nothing else. We will adjourn. Thanks for participating.